This is like a script. It's not a game script.
Right.
It's a script.
Fuck the Oscars, you know? Fuck the Oscars! Fuck you!
Because the most subtle nuances of emotions could be seen on screen. With the PlayStation 4, games have now finally reached that stage.
This is the Citizen Game Podcast, where we talk about our dads, and what if we ask the question, what if your dad was kind of a fucked up guy?
But what if you went on a journey and learned to be better or something?
And he's kind of strict with you because he used to party really hard and he's just worried of the direction your life's taking. But all right, so we're talking about the God of War, another crossed off list of like games in the intro. So hooray!
Oh yeah, right. You have
The script, the one where he goes, "It's not a game script; it's a script."
right.
Which, yeah,
They
goddamn,
invented scripts.
that's some fucking pretentious ass.
Yeah.
So, I actually went through the pain and effort of playing the 3 original God of War games.
Yes, and I did not. I had never played a God of War game except for this one, which I played for this podcast.
And I hadn't either, and I don't know why I did. Not that they were terrible, but they were kind of exhausting.
Well, they give you context.
Yeah. But I
Good.
played 1, 2, and 3, didn't play any of the fucking spin-offs or anything.
Ascension. I think
Didn't
it's
play
called.
Ascension or any of that shit.
And the mobile game or the handheld
The PSP
spin-offs.
games.
Yeah.
Which are apparently all fine. They all reviewed fine when they came out. And I played all those because this game actually is more of a sequel than I was expecting. Like I knew it wasn't like a full reboot. But-
Right. It's whatever. Okay, the term soft reboot gets thrown around so much that it now doesn't mean anything.
I mean, but it is a fucking sequel. Like you even
Right.
see like there's a part where you see like the ghost. It deals with
I
his
know.
dad, which you
Yeah,
directly
no,
killed.
like you get Zeus's ghost and they talk about what he did.
Which is why I kind of wanted to ask you, because the main thrust of this game, or at least a lot of it, is Kratos reckoning with his past and how that influenced his son. And I wanted to ask you how that worked for you as someone who didn't have really a whole lot of context going in.
Right. Well, I mean, I knew the basic gist. I know at the end of God of War 3, he has murdered almost all the Greek gods. And it ends with him killing Zeus. I mean, I knew that going in. But as to how it worked, the only time I actually liked it was when his son became an asshole and killed that guy. Because I liked it because it felt like it was not doing exactly the rote, like, dad learns to like his kid story by just making the kid kind of a shit.
Yeah, I don't like how it was handled, though.
I don't like how it got resolved because it felt too easy.
It's almost, well, I think that the sequel picks that back up,
Right,
but it
I'm
treats
sure.
it more like a spell that he's under rather than
Oh.
no, I mean, like in this game
Right.
they kind of treat it more like it's a spell he's under or something rather than like genuine change of emotion. Like he just snaps out of it and he's
Yeah.
like, why was I such an asshole? And it's like, it would have been more interesting that if that was all real, but I don't know where they go with that. So much of this game feels like setup.
Yeah, I mean, the whole game feels that way to me. Like, yeah, because even at the end, when you get the big twist at the end that his mother wanted to name him Loki, and that he's actually half god, half giant, which is Loki is in Greek mythology. In Norse mythology.
Right.
The half god, half giant. I don't know what that means. I'm sure it's going to mean something in the sequel.
Well, it means he's a little asshole, I guess.
I guess, but he's not. At that point, he stopped being an asshole.
But he might be.
He's nice now. But I also just like him being an asshole. It's like, well, that makes sense. Like if you told a kid that he was a god
Yes.
and he was
Yeah.
better than everyone else, it makes sense that he'd be a dick because he's like, well, I'm better than everyone else.
I like the scene where you get the Greek mythology version of sharing a beer with your son for the first time.
Where he drinks that wine out of
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that was good.
It's very cute.
Yeah.
But would you say, as far as the whole conflict, or like I said, the main thematic thrust, were you invested at the very least?
No.
Okay.
Just not really. I didn't. I mean, it just felt very generic. Like, yeah, we're doing the father-son thing. They're gonna go on a journey. Dad's gonna, and all the moments where it's like, oh, he gives him a new knife or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's what you do when you're writing this.
So I feel, with having played the first 3 games, I feel conflicted. Mainly if this like works at all. And so let me circle back and talk a little bit about the original games, where the first one maybe isn't the best, like with set pieces and mechanically, but it is the best, like as in a design, like a narrative and structure and everything like that. It's essentially an epilogue to a Greek tragedy that already happened. Because Kratos, he asks for Ares' help, and he becomes an asshole and can kill everything. And well, no, he accidentally kills his wife and child.
Mm-hmm.
And so he vows revenge. Well, not just revenge, but also that the gods, since they're using them, are basically like, we will magically make you forget you killed your wife and child and forgive you and everything if you kill Ares. So he's also just trying to make the nightmares go away. But of course, he completes his goal, and they're like, we forgive you, Kratos, but we can't actually wipe away the memories of what you've done. I think it would have been a fine ending, if Kratos jumps off the mountain and he dies. But it's almost comical because they basically just stop him like, no, Kratos, we have a franchise, and stop him from dying. And it's like, you're the god of war. But they also do a weird thing where it ends where they say he's like, oh, he was the god of war forever. Like he presided over like World War I and World War II.
Huh? At the ending of the first game.
Yeah, like I think they had different plans for the sequel initially, but I don't really know. And like I said, solid game. Like it's not a great, well told story. It's very brief. You just get some short cutscenes, but it establishes the motivation enough, and it's fine for like a PS2 hack and slash game.
Mm-hmm.
And then where I think things kind of go wrong is God of War 2. And like Max Payne 2, a pretty good sequel. Like they tie up basically every loose thread you could pull on and kill everybody.
Yeah.
And Max Payne's motivation is pretty clear and everything. God of War 2 just feels like, I don't know, Kratos a fucking asshole, I guess. And so Zeus kills him, and he has to kill him back. And then it does kind of the Halo 2 thing, where it just stops, where it felt like, oh, were they just going to finish the game here, but they ran out of time, so the third game is just going to be finishing what they had planned for the second game? Because it literally just ends the same, where Kratos just goes back in time to stop himself from being killed by Zeus, and then he fights Zeus and doesn't kill him, and then Kratos dies again, and then he basically has to repeat the exact same thing in God of War 3. Except God of War 3, he just kills all the Titans, all the gods, and the only notable thing is that they try and pull some, it's a pretty nasty game. Like there's just, the first game, Kratos is a bad guy, but you understand his motivations. By the second game and definitely the third game, he's just a complete irredeemable asshole who just wants destruction for no reason. And that's kind of fun. But then they kind of try and pull some whack ass feely bits because there's like a little girl that reminds him of his daughter, and I didn't even mention that it's they established that he's the son of Zeus.
Yes, I knew that one.
And it's this really embarrassing thing where they go, Kratos, the power to kill a god was in you all along. It didn't matter that you found Pandora's box in the first game. And it really misses the mark. And it's not like, because of course you want to compare this newer game to The Last of Us, where we have because like there's a context to that I think we should give, which is this game was like the peak of when people were making jokes about the sad dadification of games. Yeah.
Because the first, it was actually slightly before The Last of Us, there was Walking Dead. And then like a few months later, The Last of Us came out. And both of those were like, people forget how praised the first season of Walking Dead was, I almost feel like. It's like people were constantly talking about, it's like the ending of made me cry.
I still like it.
Like it, I know I still like it too, but I feel like because Last of Us became the model for prestige games, people sort of forgot the extreme praise that like season 1 of The Walking Dead got.
I think Telltale also kind of killed that themselves,
by constantly trying to remake it. Yeah, trying to recreate that high of Last of Us season 1.
Yeah, and just milling out a bazillion,
which was also one of their only games that actually made money.
Yeah.
Was not even the later seasons of that, but season 1 was one of the only ones that made money.
Yeah.
But
and a bunch of other forgotten games where you forgot the main character was like a dad, or Watch Dogs where you're an uncle.
I never played that. But I feel like the 1-2 punch of The Walking Dead and Last of Us solidified the idea that it's like
BioShock Infinite.
Yeah, but that came later. That was like part of the trend.
Not much. It was a year later.
Right. But at that point, people had already identified the trend.
Yeah, yeah.
Like those two games, The Walking Dead and Last of Us, made the trend noticeable. And then everything else,
this game came out in 2018.
Exactly. So this was well after people had been making jokes about it.
And of course, the joke was like fucking Kratos is a sad dad.
Because it kind of symbolized what people were saying was the pattern here, which is like we went from hyper macho, hyper violent dudes in like they're like 20s basically or 30s, like just murder machines. But now they need to have feelings, and the way you give them feelings is by giving them a little kid.
And of course, the funny thing is that Kratos was a sad dad from the start.
But he was a sad dad. There's a difference between being a sad dad whose kid is already dead.
Yes.
Because the sad dad thing is you are a dad and your whole thing is about your relationship to the kid. Like, Kratos, yeah, technically he's a sad dad, but that's not what people meant. What it meant was a game that's about fatherhood.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can argue the early God of War games were about fatherhood. And that was just like an incidental element of his revenge quest.
Yeah, and I wasn't opposed to like the idea of Kratos being a sad dad necessarily, but it's the execution, because what I was getting at was, of course, go to compare it to Joel or whatever. It's like, he had a shady past because he lost a kid and he's dead on the inside.
Right.
And it's very easy to see how him meeting Ellie, gets him to care again and care about his life and everything. Whereas God of War is so fucking extreme. It is so hard to buy that this guy would ever calm the fuck down at all, because by the end he comes across less as like a human and more of just a deranged animal. And like a good example, I mean, from the very start, you're kind of encouraged to just randomly murder bystanders and your own troops that are in your way. But like in the third game, there's this. It's a very incidental thing because you're like chasing after Poseidon, or you already killed him. I can't remember. And you go to like his chambers, and he's got presumably his like wives or slaves or whatever the fuck. And Kratos is dragging along this woman, like one of Poseidon's wives. And you're kind of wondering as the player, like, why is he protecting this lady and dragging her through? And the punchline is that he uses her to like prop open a door, like a fucking medieval like rotate, where you gotta like pull the chain or whatever. And she ends up like getting crushed, and you hear like the bones smash and everything. And it's just so irredeemable and evil. And it's hard. This new Kratos, it's weird because it's almost like the character. The arc kind of happens off screen, or at least the most important parts.
Right, because that's a weird thing I found about this game. Even not playing the previous games, but knowing vaguely where they end up, right?
Yeah.
He already left Greece, moved up here, got married, had a kid, like fell in love, got married, had a kid. That all happens between the games. So, like, yeah, it does feel like he's already been on a pretty huge journey that we don't get to see.
But that journey would be without killing, and so I guess
yeah,
cover that. But it's also, I suppose, at least in the moment, you can like suspend your disbelief in that like gods would live different lives. Like, yeah, I suppose. Because you don't know how time works in this magical world or whatever. And so it's like, I suppose someone could chill out after like 1,000 years. Like anybody could calm the fuck down. But I guess everything feels kind of hollow because Kratos, you got your revenge,
Yeah.
Like
the weird thing about what I just said, so he got married, he had a kid, blah, blah, blah. But he's still an asshole. He has to learn to not be an asshole over the course of this game, which is weird.
He has to learn to confront his past instead of just ignoring it, I suppose, and pretending like it didn't happen.
But he doesn't seem that mellowed out. Like, if you want to do that, he should be really like mellow, like, I don't want an adventure at the beginning of the game.
Like a fucking monk or something.
He should. Okay, I'm gonna bring this up. What I brought up in the Uncharted 4. It's the Dark Knight Returns plot.
Yeah.
Right, where he's older, he's settled down, he's retired, and then he's forced to come out of it. Except here, like, Kratos doesn't seem that forced.
Well, I mean, he wants to take. He's honoring his wife's wishes.
He wants to take her ashes up the mountain, and then he gets visited by Baldur, who's a hilarious character.
Hey, I mean, and also quick point, it kind of sucks that it's like just started, did a soft reboot, wife's dead again.
That's so weird, actually.
Kind of fucked up.
That's actually so weird that, like, that's what I mean. Like, this whole thing, this relationship he had happens totally off screen. He now has a new dead wife who we never met, but who we constantly get brought up as important in the game, like, oh, your mother said this. And then the twist at the end of the game is that she was a giant.
Yeah,
which doesn't feel that meaningful.
You just get implications that she kind of was pulling the strings a bit more, maybe.
Yeah, where her meeting Kratos and having this kid and all that was part of some giant prophecy. That's what you learn at the end of the game. But, like, that twist doesn't work as well because I don't know who this character is.
Right.
Like, this is just someone you've talked about a couple times.
I think like this game almost could have worked better if like God of War 2 and 3 didn't exist. Like, maybe I could buy Kratos from the first game chilling out, but yeah, he's just so far gone by 3 that it really it doesn't work. Which is interesting because they have direct like lines of dialogue and references to the ending of 3, which I
Right.
wasn't expecting, and and like Athena herself, which I
Yeah,
did not
she shows
expect
up
her to
again.
pop up. Yeah, but I guess okay. You want to talk a little bit just about actually playing the game?
Sure. So I've never played the previous games, like I said. Um, uh, it was fine. I don't really play games like this, is the problem.
It's fine, but with a few baffling choices.
The camera was annoying.
Yeah, and that because it's not that it's just like closer to him. Because I was thinking about like I don't know, Jedi Fallen Order, which is kind of like a Souls like almost.
Mm-hmm.
But you're close, like in the old God of Wars, you were zoomed the fuck out, and it's very much in like the vein of Devil May Cry and everything. But not only is it zoomed in, but like you can't look behind you. Like in Jedi Fallen Order, you still see like the full battleground, and you can move around and see who's attacking from behind. But they have to put an indicator in this game that
Yeah,
someone's
because you
behind
can't
you.
look behind you at all. And so when you're fighting like 10 enemies, it becomes really annoying.
Yeah, it feels like it really wasn't made for group combat.
Yeah, it feels like it was made for fighting the troll bosses or whatever.
Yeah, or
But
I mean, even Dark Souls, you can still kind of see what's behind you for
Yeah,
the
their
most
cameras.
part.
I've never played those games, but I've seen footage of them. Their
Yeah.
cameras are more zoomed out than this,
Yeah,
even though they have the same like locking on to certain enemies thing, in my understanding.
and it's fine. It's fine, and but what killed it for me was the fucking RPG elements.
Yeah, though all the RPG elements and the open world elements, which are linked, and both really feel out of place and annoying. Like, why does it need to be an open world? Why does it need to be an overworld that you have to go through? Like, I don't understand why they needed to introduce that at all.
Because that's what big AAA games are.
Yeah,
And
but
man,
it doesn't
it's-
have to be. I mean, Last of Us doesn't have that.
So a good comparison, like Last of Us does have like some kind of whatever upgrades. Like you take the pills
I meant
and
the open world stuff more, but yeah, you have RPG elements in Last of Us.
but it's like this is like the UI. Like I just wanted to go to sleep when I saw like, oh, you can upgrade your current armor or buy a new one, and I just got annoyed because there was a part where I was kind of stuck and I kept dying, and I didn't really. Oh, I just haven't upgraded my equipment in a while. And it's not like you're making any choices or anything.
I just pick whatever gives me the best bonuses and put it on.
Yeah, this isn't the fucking Witcher 3 or anything. Like, I'm not making any real decisions here. You could have cut the whole thing out and just
get a linear progress system.
Yeah.
Where my stuff gets better as I kill people.
I mean, I think the RPG shit is more superfluous than the side questing, because at least that's just like more content.
At least the side questing stuff is completely optional.
Like, I know why that's there. It's to justify the price tag of a big video game. But it's also just baffling in like a story sense. Like, why would it matter what armor Kratos is wearing? I forgot who said this, but it's like Kratos defeated the whole Olympic pantheon without a shirt on. I don't think he needs armor.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's barely armor anyways. There's nothing that covers his nips, you know?
Yes, there is.
Okay, you're right.
There's like
you're right.
one suit of
I
armor
forgot
that
about
covers
that.
his chest.
But there's a lot of like shoulder pads. I'm like,
But there's
come
stuff
on.
that has better defense than that armor that doesn't, so it's very confusing.
Yeah, definitely. And so I enjoyed like the original games for the most part. And I sent you a video
Which I did watch.
of the Gaming Brit Show, who is a yep.
I'm sorry, the name is so funny. I'm not trying to be mean to this guy. I don't know this guy. I don't want beef or whatever. But the Gaming Brit is a fake YouTuber I would make up. That's the
Just-
name of like a fake
The
YouTuber from a comic.
Gaming insert anything.
Yeah, the
sounds
gaming.
like
Yeah, because it would be like the gaming aristocrat. I'm sure that's real.
The insert blank gamer, the grumpy gamer.
Any the is like the rational pedophile. Like
Oh god.
any the YouTuber, the thing is like a joke to me. Like the thinking Scandinavian or whatever, probably racist.
Yeah, because it's an exception. Yeah, that's definitely racist.
Right, but no, I meant you know what I mean. But they just become jokes.
So you don't need to not start like I think his content's good for the most part. I don't like this video, but I wanted to show you it because I think he was like a good representative
of the reaction of some people to this game.
Specifically like the person who is into the character action spectacle fight, basically Devil May Cry.
Right.
And it's like doesn't give a fuck about story, or at least it's like if you sacrifice any sort of gameplay elements for story,
they
you're
think it's
doofus.
never. Yeah, you're stupid because games are supposed. I mean, this is. I'm going to say something mean. Actually, that was too mean. But it's like this isn't even illegitimate. But games are toys. That's not even an illegitimate way to look at games. That is what a game is ultimately. But that's like the philosophy is like. This is something I play to have fun. Any story is like ancillary, secondary, and prioritizing story. Yeah, it means you don't understand what a video game is the perspective. Right.
Right. And
any evidence that you prioritize story or you try to sell a game for its story is just a category error.
Yeah. And I kind of agree with some, like, I understand because, yeah, this series was just mindless action. And you are swapping out, I would say, a worse combat system for dramatic cutscenes. I guess where I disagree though is just I wasn't as upset or whatever about the Switch because I don't think God of War's combat was that great. And
yeah.
I do think I think there is value, or at least I just game stories have been getting better, and there's more good game stories for the most part. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit spoiled. So it is kind of hard to go back to some PS2 titles where it's not only like kind of the dumbest shit possible, but also, yeah, like the gratuitous, like every female character
and in that
has
video,
her tits out.
If I could get some criticism of that video. It plays all these old clips where it's like, I want God of War to get you laid. And it's like, I think I'm supposed to think that's obviously better. Like the really sort of honestly adolescent like attitude towards violence that the early God of War devs have, where it's like, I want you to feel pure rage. It's like God of War is about blood, and I don't want to do an impression of the guy. That's too mean. The God of War is about blood and tits and fucking, and it's like that's good. Like I'm supposed to think that's good. And that gets into the weird. Okay, I'm gonna go off on a bit of a tangent about sad dad games for a sec, because that gets into the weird idea of like this was a theory floated by a lot of people at the time in like 2018 when people were like, "There's too much sad dad. We've reached peak dad sadness."
Yeah.
And it was that like basically this shift happened because the people who work in the game industry got older. And so like 15 years after we had the God of War and the Call of Duties of the world, Halo to an extent, but actually less. Halo's weird. It's got all this like slightly harder sci-fi stuff it loves jerking off about.
Right.
But the hyper masculine, hyper violent characters. And then when the guys who made that like turned 35 and had kids, we suddenly have middle-aged sad dad, who notably is still hyper violent. Joel. This isn't true in The Walking Dead, but Joel kills so many fucking people.
Yeah, because it's still a video game.
Still a video game.
And that's what we talked about, is the sad dad is like a brilliant compromise.
Right, yes, because it's like I get to feel like I'm sensitive now, I'm mature now, I have a meaningful emotional relationship with my children primarily, not their mothers who are usually non-existent. But with my children, but I'm still a fucking badass and I still kill everyone who gets in my way. Like the sad dad is a perfect compromise. And so the video, I'm not accusing this guy of anything. I don't watch the rest of his stuff.
No, and
Right.
this video is 7 years old, and his content's only gotten better.
Right, I'm sure. Jesus, I forgot how long ago 2018 was. But this feels like a rejection of that by people who are like, no, I wanted the adolescent fantasy. And it's not even that I think the sad dad stuff is that much more mature, right?
Right.
But this rejection of it, where it's like, no, just let me stay an angry 17-year-old. At least in this context, I'm not saying you're like emotionally stunted completely or whatever. But like, let me just stay in that world is interesting. And there's a bit of anti-intellectual stuff going on there too.
Yeah.
And it ties back into prioritizing anything but constant gameplay excitement as wrong.
Yeah.
Inherently.
For me personally, of course, it's like there's nothing wrong with just focusing on pure cathartic violence. But what kind of rubbed me the wrong way is great counterexample. I love Doom. I love the new Doom games.
Yes.
Doom Eternal is this giant, metal jerk off fest of like being a cool guy. He's so angry, he rips demons' heads off. But it's presented in a very fun and like knowingly childish way. Whereas God of War has it is the adolescent thing where it's like trying to kind of be mature in an immature way, and
right.
I feel like you get to kill every god and you get to fuck who's the god of love?
Aphrodite.
Yeah, it's like, and you get to see her tits, and she's got lesbian helpers and things like that. Very particular. It's a different type of adolescence. You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, because here's the thing, and this is my feeling, but I've not played the Doom games, the new Doom games. I played old Doom with you, but this is the impression I get of them, and let me know if this is accurate. They feel, they don't feel adolescent. They feel nostalgic.
Yeah,
because they feel like I mean, people like to divide culture, and I feel like gaming culture and online culture in general can be hit with this very hard, like ironic versus post-ironic, or pre-ironic versus post-ironic. Post-ironic is ironic. And that's the God of War games, again, let me know if this is accurate, are like the completely pre-ironic version. They think this shit is so cool, whereas the Doom reboot, like or Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, are like post-ironic and looking back and having fun with pre-ironic stuff, but in a way where there's is a level of detachment.
I think that's fair, and I think especially kind of in the design, they talked about, they compared the monster design to like Disney animation because it's very expressive, like how they act and how you kill them. There's like references to Master of the Universe, like the way he like holds his sword or whatever. Yeah, there's definitely an element of nostalgia, but nostalgia in like a more childlike, gleeful way,
right?
Not trying to be. You're right. I think you're
right. Because that's why I said adolescent, not childish.
Yeah,
they feel like a 15-year-old who doesn't want to be seen as a kid anymore, but has a fundamentally kid worldview, like of the original God of War. I mean,
right.
And so there's this like edginess, which is a term that gets way overused.
But those games are
obviously, yeah, they're probably edgy. Like, I mean, literally, I mean, yeah.
And so all that to say, which is just like, yeah, I think they did compromise on fun gameplay for trend chasing, and the overall pacing and whatnot. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's nice to have a story where you have Freya and she doesn't get her tits out. Like I appreciate
Yeah.
that, you know. I appreciate actually being a little invested and not just having completely brain dead writing, which some people I've seen this where people will defend the first God of War. And like I said, it is the best of them. There was at least some thought and put into them, but do not try and tell me that game as at all at all is on par with this one in terms of like maturity and like basic storytelling and things like that.
Yeah.
Do not try and convince me that you were emotionally invested in the original God of War. I don't
Right.
believe you.
I do kind of want to talk about, so moving on from that, I want to talk about like the other, because like we haven't really talked about the story of this game directly.
It's so simple.
It's so simple. Well, the main plot is just him trying to get to the top of the highest peak and then finding out it's not, and then going to another place to get to the real top and then scattering the ashes. Yeah. But like because it's so simple, all of the actual external conflict is like just weirdly intersecting it. If that makes any sense.
You mean like how
Like Baldur doesn't give a fuck about you scattering your wife's ashes.
Yeah, and you just kind of run into
You just run into them. Like
Thor's kids.
Thor's kids. Yeah, you just run into them. Or Baldur just shows up at your house and harasses you.
Like implication of maybe like greater politics.
Right, but it's interesting how like the closest to any context you get is you learn Baldur's backstory with Freya. Which is at least
the thrust, yeah.
Huh?
Like and that's kind of the thematic thrust at the end. That's at least what it concludes with, you know.
Right, because like, and that's a story that Kratos and Atreus are just kind of got wrapped up in. Except there's an interesting thing that I guess I have to give points for foreshadowing, which is that Atreus by accident pierces him with mistletoe.
Oh, right.
And that Loki is the one who, or Loki tells someone to hit him with mistletoe in the mythology. So I guess that's foreshadowing that Atreus is Loki. Yeah, like because of the way the game is set up, the plot is set up, you have to have the villains just kind of be people you run into or who show up to harass you for unclear reasons. And I don't know if I haven't played Ragnarok. I don't think you have either.
No.
If the politics involving Odin become the direct plot of Ragnarok,
I just know that you meet him, you know,
yeah,
like talk
and
to
you
him
meet
and
Thor,
shit.
who you don't meet, who like Odin and Thor are kind of teased, but always off screen in this game.
What did you think of just what in Baldur's motivation, like when that's revealed and everything?
It's an interesting take on the what is his motivation in. I mean, it's an interesting take on the myth. Because in my understanding of the myth, being a sort of, I'm an amateur into Norse mythology, is like that yes, Freya made it so that nothing would hurt him, but he wasn't mad about that. That was just cool. But the Loki discovered that Freya had forgot to make sure that mistletoe couldn't hurt him. So making it this idea that it's like he's cursed because he can't feel anything. Because it turns out making everything not hurt him means nothing can have an impact on him at all. And that drives him insane. That's the idea, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of neat.
Because all sensation is pain, is the theory. And therefore he can't taste, he can't feel warm, he can't feel cool, he can't feel the ground under him, anything. And that's an interesting read of that character as an alternate like take.
So I've got to ask though. I have to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he's kind of completely in the right, because that's really fucked up to do to your kid, Freya.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty fucked up.
It's not clear if she knew that would happen, because the intent was to make him invincible.
Yeah.
I don't know if she knew it would mean no feeling.
I'm just saying, I'd be pretty mad. Even
I would
if
be
it
mad
wasn't
too.
on purpose, you know?
Even when it's on purpose, yeah, he's kind of right.
Like that is, I mean, I don't know how long he's been like that, but that's a lot of torture.
They say like 100 years, I think.
Right.
They say or at least he says a lifetime. So but I think because this, I mean, I don't know. So how much does God of War, the first 3, lean into the Greek gods being dicks?
Oh, it's almost hard to say because like of course they're like Zeus is a dick, but Kratos is like a giant dick.
Right.
So it's like relative to Kratos, everyone's pretty normal, I guess. But
Right.
I mean, like in God of War 3, Hermes is just like annoying. Like that's the reason you're supposed to kill him, is he's just annoying.
Yeah. Because this really leans into the whole like, yeah, most ancient gods by modern standards are evil. You know, they're rapists, they kill people for no reason. Right?
Yeah.
And this really leans into that with Odin. Like Odin, when he's talked about, is talked about as a complete villain. And Thor's kids just like kill people for fun. And the giants are clearly meant, which is definitely not true in the way that Norse people interpreted that originally. But the giants are clearly just the victims in the giant god relationship, which is interesting. Because I was wondering if the older games leaned into that as justification for wiping out the Olympian gods.
No, you're not. You were not really that justified. Like, it's just the first game. You have the clear motivation of Ares being a dick,
a god who's usually interpreted as a dick,
and the other gods want him gone. But in the second game, Kratos kind of starts shit. Like I guess he, you could say like he's angry that he was used or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it kind of starts with Kratos starting some shit, and then Zeus whips his ass, and he's like, "I'm going to take revenge for you whipping my ass for me being a dick." I don't know. It's so nothing. Like there's so little plot justification for anything going on in the second and third game. But that is a thing that they talk about in this game, where it does kind of expect you to like go, "Oh yeah, Zeus was kind of an asshole," but I never really bought that hard in the original games, which is like another link between them where I'm like, I don't know, man. Maybe Kratos should have just been put down. Like,
well, maybe it is relying on you being like, well, yeah, if you have a knowledge of Greek mythology, Zeus is an asshole.
Yeah,
it feels like it's because it feels like this happens a lot. I feel like with games with anything, not just games, where there's a long gap between sequels, which there was a relatively long gap here, where they're like, people don't remember it that well. We can sort of subtly reinterpret what happened as a kind of soft retcon. If you get what I'm saying here?
I wouldn't say that's what's happening here. It's just me like thinking like because while I'm playing like the second and third game, like it still expects you to still be on Kratos' side a little bit. And it's like, no, it's just me kind of rejecting that. So I wouldn't say it really does that. It's still just continuing with like, well, what's his name? The head guy who's on your side. He says, well, as far as I understand it, the gods kind of had it coming. And it's like, I don't know. Did they?
Yeah, the head guy, who I like, actually. He's funny.
Oh, yeah. It definitely,
way more of a charming character than Kratos or his annoying son.
Yes. Which, of course, the most annoying Kratos' son gets is when he turns into the game developer telling you, it's like, we've got lots of side missions.
I hate that
like,
shit. Yeah, that's the thing that annoyed me about all this open world stuff. It's like, no, I have to finish this. Stop talking to me about, before we, especially it's weird because like after you finish the game, you can't just do all the side quests. So I don't even know why he needed to remind me that.
Just to let you know it's there.
Yeah.
It's advertising.
Yeah.
I want to get back to the ending because I was
Mhm.
thinking about Baldur and everything. Is it weird that he still wants to rampage after he's been fixed? Like, shouldn't he just be like overjoyed?
Well, he still
once
wants
he
to kill his mom for doing it to him.
Yeah,
That's it.
That's fair.
Like, cause that's what he says. He's like, well, it doesn't take away the 100 years I spent living like that. I'm still gonna kill you for it.
What did you think of how that's resolved with Freya? You know, she still wants to protect her special baby,
And
and
so she's like gonna let him kill her. Yeah.
and
And then Kratos kills him.
What do you think of that?
I think it's an interesting setup for a sequel. That's about it. Like, it's like, I guess we had to kill Baldur because he's the villain of this game.
Like, I understand what they're going for, because Kratos is basically like, nah, you don't get to get your revenge. It's like this only leads to more bullshit.
Right.
But it does come across as hypocritical, because again, Kratos only chilled out after he absolutely got his revenge and killed everybody.
Yeah.
Like, he got what he wanted, you know?
And his getting his revenge didn't even lead to anything really bad happening to him.
Well, nothing bad. Well, actually, that's not true. It's the ending of 3. Well, he kills himself, but he doesn't in 3. I don't know, man. Like,
but no,
that
I mean in
game's
this
so
game. I mean in the context of this game.
Oh, right.
He got like what, maybe 11, 15 years, 10, 15 years of just like being married and having a kid and chilling out.
Yeah,
it took a while before like even the local gods start knocking on his door. So
yeah, it worked out fine.
Yeah. Like he was fine. Like he was fine for a while. So I don't really buy that he's like, oh no, there's always a cycle of revenge. Like nobody from Greece seems to be coming after you for killing their gods. So
well, yeah, because they're all dead.
They're
literally all dead.
The Greek gods. Are all the Greek people dead? I have no idea.
It's been kind of it's like a weird relationship with, because Kratos was human. Like in the first game, they clearly didn't plan him to be the son of Zeus. He was just like a Spartan soldier. And the relationship with just like regular people kind of always is weird from there on. Like what's just happening in actual Greece,
right? Because in this game, there's no, except for like some of the Reavers, very early, very very early. There's no regular people.
Yeah, and I mostly like that decision because they never were important in the previous games.
But
it's
just weird. Like, are there humans?
It's weird
at all.
What is the point of a god? If
does anyone worship these gods? Because we never see any just Norse people.
Again, quick tangent, but this is why I like Hellblade more, because it's way more of it's more fantastical than the Northmen, but it feels kind of more in the same vein of like you're inhabiting the psychic realm where people believe this shit and not the literal gods actually fighting each other, and you're still in the realm of like real humans. Because it is weird that you don't have, it's like, yeah, what's a god if you don't have regular people to, which Atreus, I guess, thinks he is a regular kid.
Right, Atreus, until he learns that he's half human and half god, and then it turns out, no, you're not human at all. You're half giant, half god. So there's no humans. Not even the mother who he thought was human. Like, Kratos presumably thought his wife was a human because he didn't know she was a giant until the end.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I wanted to talk about the stylistic choices, because if our whole thing is games trying to be movies, we got to talk about the one shot.
Oh yeah, right. No cuts. Everything. So that's sort of taking away an element of film language, which is the cut. Like there's no cuts. Everything has to, and this is because of a desire to make cutscenes and gameplay flow together even more, because that's always a tell that you're dealing with a cutscene. It's obviously that there's cuts in a cutscene. They're shot like movies,
Yeah.
even in stuff like Last of Us 2. The
So
cutscenes.
I want to just ask you, like, what did you think of that, like, stylistic
It
choice?
got kind of annoying sometimes. It kind of became goofy. They could have, yeah. That's basically it. Like when it was clearly a cutscene, it kind of became goofy that we couldn't cut.
I guess I appreciate it as a choice, just in like I don't know, it looked different. You know, like the not that like this was like the right choice for like Naughty Dog games, but they're mostly like reverse shot and everything. So
yeah,
I guess it was a way to differentiate itself. But on this overall like no cuts thing, I think it kind of was stupid. Because of course, what lots of people pointed out is Half-Life from 1998 technically has no cuts. And then the more apt example is Dead Space, which does have loading screens, but what's the fucking point of having no cuts when you pause the game and have to go through this terrible UI with
right
upgrades, which of course Dead Space, the pause menu is in the game and all your upgrades and stuff and your health is like on your suit and everything and all done like organically. So I kind of thought that missed the mark.
It's also, I mean, just no cuts in general. Like, because I know it doesn't Metal Gear Solid 5 do the same thing?
No way. There's cuts. No,
right,
not
but
a chance.
Because I've seen a clip from Metal Gear Solid 5 where they're doing shot reverse shot, but by panning the camera.
I think
they're not
there's
cutting.
More of that, but well, I mean, you're making me second guess myself because I do remember those camera moves, but I've only played like the up to Metal Gear Solid 2, so I'm not sure.
Right, or at least they went for minimal cuts.
Yeah,
like obviously there were time skip cuts, but in the cutscenes themselves, I think I haven't played it. What I've read, there are like minimal cuts. But yeah, I didn't find it too distracting most of the time. And there are still some shots I think are really great, like when the dragon dies.
You mean the World Serpent?
No.
Oh, the dragon. Right.
I fight the dragon in the mountain.
The boss fights were good. And
the boss fights looked really good.
the God of War has always done great boss fights.
And yeah, I do like the part inside the World Serpent.
Yes.
And that's one where I feel like having the camera be constantly fixed to the character and no cuts even when they're doing cutscenes helps.
Yeah,
because it sells the feeling of being there with the character.
And you get a better sense of scale.
You get a sense of scale and you get a sense of movement.
Yeah. I mean, but it is like that stuff, like boss fights and the sense of scale is probably like one of the stronger through lines as far as like ties to the previous games. And still just selling you on spectacle of we're going to watch like this smaller guy jump all over a big thing and fuck it up. So that was still enjoyable. I mean, they didn't. You don't do fucking bullshit quick time events anymore, so that's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Getting rid of quick time events is obviously the correct decision.
Yeah, which is always like the worst one. It's not even like a quick time event, but at least you open treasure. You press a button. Like in the old games, you had to like mash circle. And it was always like this question of like, okay, so he can fucking lift up a giant, like a Hydra or whatever, but he's struggling to open a chest. I guess it's a really well locked chest. I don't know.
Yeah.
Why are you making me mash this button?
Yeah, that's stupid. Like, yeah, the over reliance on quick time events is definitely one of the things from that era that ages the worst. The era that produced the original God of War games.
Yes.
Like, do you remember the fucking annoying quick time events in Force Unleashed? You ever play that?
Of course. I mean, that is the
Those were
closest to God of War.
Right.
that
Those
you
were
can
so
get.
annoying. I hated those.
You know what? So there's that's a great parallel. Like the Force Unleashed to Jedi Fallen Order, and then like the God of War games to this series.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Because like you look at Star Killer, that was his name, right?
Yeah.
That guy, he is very much the generic video game protagonist of that era.
Oh, and I brought this up to you where it's essentially the same thing, where it's like, oh, there's a secret guy that's not in the original stories, and he fucks
Right, and
all
he's
these
so much more
characters.
powerful than all the
It's
guys
so
you know. And then he goes on a murder, except he, of course, because it's Star Wars, has to be like, the murder rampage I went on was actually bad. I'm going to become good now.
Yeah, and he fucks up Darth Vader.
Yeah, he beats Darth Vader, and he beats the Emperor in one of the endings.
Well, he doesn't beat him. It was a dirty trick because the Emperor always fucks him up in either ending.
Right. But you beat him in the gameplay section.
Yes, and it's great. Again, another thing that like probably the most immature people will want to argue like, oh, this is so much better than Disney Star Wars. Remember when we had good Star Wars stories? And it's like, come on, dude.
Yeah,
Come
about
on.
the Force Unleashed.
Come on. Like, I understand it's appealing and just it's blatant stupidity. But
Yeah.
good example, Jedi Fallen Order, more like it's kind of the every game, and it has, the fancy motion capture, and it's about trauma.
Right. Everything's about fucking trauma.
And it's not like the best story, but it's like, on par with, I guess, the Clone Wars at the very least. So that's better than the Force Unleashed. But I definitely like that game better than this game, probably purely for gameplay reasons. And,
It's also not. It doesn't have the inherent, because like Jedi Fallen Order is not a sequel to The Force Unleashed about the same character.
Yes, exactly.
It's just also a big Star Wars game.
But it is the same time period and like almost the same kind of concept. It's because everybody, for some fucking reason, especially around the time of The Force Unleashed, thought like, oh, the time between episodes 3 and 4, that is the most interesting time.
That's
ever.
also what they all think now.
That is true.
That's also what all Star Wars media now is. Like, even stuff that's really good, like Andor, or the stuff that's not so good.
Everything
like
else.
Everything else, basically, coming out right now. But it's all like, it's either between 3 and 4 or right after 6. That's what all Star Wars media now is. And no one wants to touch the prequels. No one wants to touch the sequels.
Well, and now that we're talking about Star Wars, is there anything else you want to talk about with God of War?
No. This game was okay.
Let me see. Oh, the part where he brings out the Blades of Chaos, that was fun.
That was,
I enjoyed that. Like
that video you sent me, it was constantly like, "There's no Blades of Chaos in this game," which confused the hell out of me.
So that was, he didn't play it yet. He was reacting to the trailer.
That does make me take his opinion slightly less seriously, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, and he came out with like a later video where he actually played it, and he has more nuanced opinions and everything. But
right.
I mean, they do.
And I get that you're just representing the reaction of the time, right?
Yes, and like I said, I still feel like I don't agree with like the, there never had to be like, we have to have quote unquote like silly action gameplay mechanics. Like for some reason that's like associated with the less mature. Here, let me try and start over. But it's like, he's throwing in the more arcadey combat, with like tits and immaturity and like slow walking and everything with like the new game, like that those always had to be like exclusive. And so it's like I agree with we didn't have to go for this weird over the shoulder thing. Like I agree with all that, and but I disagree with the content that has to necessarily mean we got to make a dumb game where story doesn't matter. Because there's plenty of games with more like arcadey combat.
I to a degree, I think you're right, but I kind of disagree in that like there is a link. Having super arcadey and fast-paced combat, and then trying to do this story about fatherhood would feel dissonant to some people. I don't think I don't think the link between them comes out of nowhere. But I also think, like anything that becomes a kind of culture war, they do get seen as interlinked more than they should be as cultural signifiers.
Yeah, and it's I hate that shit because I mean, and I've said before, I'm the kind of person like I'll just take most things as they are. I'm fine with like something I totally disagree with is people will complain about kind of a more walkie-talkie section in the game, and they'll say it's like this will be really bad on replays. It's like I don't give a fuck about replay value. Like that weird thing where it's like it's so like you should be able to skip cutscenes just because you should be able to control like the pace of a game. Like for you can fast forward a movie. Why can't I pick a chapter or whatever?
Right.
But I don't give a fuck about I'm willing to take a slower pace to just take in the atmosphere. If it's good storytelling, I'm fine with a long ass cutscene for the most part.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I don't.
It's a matter of engagement, as long as I'm being engaged in some form,
Because it's like, replay value. Well, I rewatch movies, I reread books if I really like them,
Yeah.
So it's like I can rewatch a cutscene as long as it's good, as long as it's a kind of game where I care about the story.
I think my main opinion probably is just stemming from the fact that I didn't really value the original games that much to begin with. So, and I think a lot of people, and the reason why that was still the minority of like a pushback and most people were fine with the new direction is because those games were big selling mainstream hits where I don't think people are as concerned about the minutia, and they cared more about like the spectacle, and so it was always more selling the spectacle rather than like the interesting raw mechanics. So when you have a very pretty game with a better told story, most people are going to be fine with that with this series.